The signal came screaming across 17 relay stations before anyone understood what it meant. Risu pressed her audio receptors flat against her skull, overwhelmed by the cascade of desperate voices bleeding through her console. She was a junior communications officer, barely 3 cycles into her posting at waypoint 17. Nothing in her training had prepared her for this. "Slow down," she begged into her transmitter. "Please slow down, I cannot understand." The voice on the other end belonged to someone ancient, someone terrified. "Our star is dying, faster than the scientists predicted. We have 3 cycles before Thessar burns." Risu's blood turned cold. Thessar, the Vethani homeworld, 4.2 billion souls. Within the hour, the Galactic Concordance Council convened across 12 worlds. Holographic representatives flickered into existence around the great circular chamber, their faces grave. Risu watched from her station, forgotten in the chaos, as the most powerful beings in the galaxy did mathematics. The Neth hegemony spoke first. "We have calculated the logistics. Our entire fleet, operating at maximum capacity, could evacuate perhaps 600 million before the star collapses. The Pelori Medical Corps can contribute 200 transport vessels," another voice added. "That accounts for another 90 million. The Asari can offer food supplies for refugees, but our ships are not designed for passenger transport." Numbers flew back and forth across the chamber. Ships, fuel, time, distance, life support capacity, food requirements, medical needs. Risu listened as hope slowly drained from the conversation. "The conclusion is unavoidable," the Neth representative finally said. "Even with the combined resources of every concordance member, we cannot evacuate more than 1.3 billion Vethani. The remaining 3 billion will perish." Silence fell across 12 worlds. "Then we must choose," someone whispered. "Choose who lives and who dies." The Vethani representative, an elder named Grandmother Sola, sat motionless. Her translucent skin had gone pale, the bioluminescent patterns that usually danced across her body now dim and still. "We understand," she said quietly. "We thank the Concordance for its consideration. We will make our peace." The council began drafting a formal response. Words like deep regret and tragic circumstances and impossible. Situation filled the document. Risu felt sick. And then a new signal cut through. It came from a primitive relay network on the outer rim of concordant space. A young species, newcomers, not even full members yet. Most council representatives had to check their databases to identify the source. Humans from a planet called Earth. The voice that filled the chamber was calm and clear. "This is Admiral Priya Okonkwo of Earth Combined Fleet. We have intercepted the Vethani distress signal. We are coming. Tell us what you need." The Neth representative laughed, actually laughed. "Humans, your species has perhaps 400 interstellar vessels, most of them cargo haulers and mining rigs. You have no military fleet, no evacuation infrastructure. What exactly do you believe you can contribute?" "Everything we have," the human admiral replied. "You are not invited to this discussion. You are not full concordance members. This matter does not concern you. 4 billion people are about to die. That concerns everyone." Risu leaned forward, her forgotten console beeping with incoming data. Human ships were already launching. Dozens of them. Then hundreds. Cargo vessels, research stations, passenger liners, mining platforms. Anything that could fly and carry bodies was lifting off from human colonies across 4 systems. "This is foolish," the Neth representative declared. "Your ships are not designed for this. Your crews are not trained. You will accomplish nothing but adding your own dead to the count." "Maybe," Admiral Okonkwo said, "but we are not going to sit here and watch while billions die. We are not going to do mathematics and declare defeat before we have tried. You want to talk about what is possible? We will show you what is possible." The transmission ended. Grandmother Sola had not moved throughout the exchange, but something had changed in her eyes, something that might have been hope. "Who are these humans?" she asked softly. Risu pulled up the file. A young species, spacefaring for only 2 centuries, evolved on a harsh world with extreme weather, predators, and disease. They had nearly destroyed themselves multiple times before reaching the stars. And yet here they were, launching everything they had toward a dying world for a species they had never met. The Concordance Council continued its deliberations, drafting formal statements and calculating acceptable losses. Risu stopped listening. She was watching the human fleet grow. 200 ships, 500, 1,000. 2,000 vessels, none of them designed for what they were about to attempt, crewed by volunteers who knew they might not come back. The galaxy had called for help, and humans had answered. Counselor Medic had seen many strange things in his long career with the Pelori Diplomatic Corps. He had witnessed the fall of empires and the birth of new civilizations. He had negotiated treaties between species that wanted to destroy each other. Nothing had prepared him for Earth. He stood in something the humans called the Global Emergency Response Center, watching chaos that somehow functioned. Screens covered every wall, showing ship positions, resource allocations, volunteer registrations, and supply chain logistics. Hundreds of humans worked at stations, shouting information back and forth, solving problems in real time. Admiral Okonkwo stood at the center of it all, her gray hair pulled back tight, her uniform rumpled from days without sleep. "We have a container ship in the Kepler system," someone shouted. "Cargo hold is empty. We can strip out the dividers and fit maybe 3,000 Vethani if we add temporary life support." "Do it," Okonkwo ordered. "What about the mining platforms?" 17 have volunteered. They are reconfiguring their ore bays now. Medic approached the Admiral carefully. "I was sent by the Concordance to observe your efforts. They wish to understand what you hope to accomplish." Okonkwo glanced at him briefly. "We hope to save as many lives as possible." "The mathematics suggest you will fail." "Then the mathematics can go to hell." A young human ran past carrying boxes of medical supplies. An elderly woman sat at a console, coordinating food shipments. A child, no more than 10 years old, helped pack emergency kits into crates. "Why are your children here?" Medic asked. "They wanted to help, parents brought them. But they cannot contribute meaningfully to the effort." Okonkwo finally turned to face him fully. Her eyes were red from exhaustion, but burning with something Medic could not identify. "Those children are making care packages for Vethani refugees. Little bags with food, toys, and notes written in badly translated Vethani saying, 'Welcome to the galaxy.' No, it will not save a single life. But when those refugees arrive scared and traumatized, those packages will tell them that. Someone cares, that they are not alone." Medic had no response. Over the following hours, he watched humans donate their personal savings to fund fuel costs. He watched doctors and nurses volunteer for dangerous duty on evacuation ships. He watched engineers work 20-hour shifts redesigning life support systems to accommodate Vethani biology. No one ordered them to do this. No government compelled their participation. They simply showed up, asked how they could help, and got to work. "I do not understand," Medic finally admitted. "The Vethani are strangers to you. Your species has had minimal contact with them. You share no history, no alliance, no obligation. Why are you doing this?" A young man nearby overheard the question. He was loading supply crates onto a transport cart, his muscles straining with the weight. "Because they need help," he said simply. "What other reason do we need?" 48 hours after the distress signal arrived, the first human ships launched. Medic watched the fleet depart from a viewing platform. 2,000 vessels of every size and configuration, none of them designed for mass evacuation, all of them racing toward a dying star. Cargo haulers with their holds converted to refugee housing. Research vessels with their laboratories stripped out for medical bays. Passenger liners with their luxury cabins replaced by rows of emergency cots. mining platforms with their ore processing equipment torn out to make room for thousands of bodies. And the crews, scientists and merchants and miners and tourists, teachers and doctors and farmers and students, ordinary humans who had never seen combat, never faced real danger, heading into the unknown because someone needed help. Okonkwo joined him on the platform. "The Concordance believes you are sending your people to die," Medic said. "Some of them probably will die," she admitted. "They know that. They volunteered anyway." "Why?" The Admiral was quiet for a long moment, watching her fleet disappear into the void. 200 years ago, my ancestors faced a crisis. A massive earthquake destroyed their city. Millions were left homeless. Countries from around the world sent help. Strangers from places my ancestors had never heard of donated money, supplies, their time. They rebuilt that city together. And you believe this is the same? The scale is different, the principle is not. She turned to face him. When someone is in trouble, you help them. Not because you will gain something, not because you are obligated, because it is the right thing to do. Medic watched the last ship vanish into warp. The Concordance calculated that saving the Vethani was impossible, he said slowly. The Concordance was wrong. Across the galaxy, on a world where the sky glowed orange with radiation, Grandmother Sola received word that help was coming. Help from a species called humans, from a planet called Earth. She had never heard of either. But for the first time in days, she allowed herself to hope. The first thing Rosa Andrade noticed when she stepped onto Thessar was the heat. It pressed down on her like a physical weight, stealing the breath from her lungs. The sky above was wrong, painted in shades of orange and red that made the midday feel like sunset. The dying star hung bloated on the horizon, angry and swollen. "Radiation levels are climbing," her partner Danny Webb reported, checking his scanner. "We have maybe 6 hours before this zone becomes dangerous." Rosa nodded, already moving toward the landing zone where thousands of Vethani waited. They were tall, slender beings with translucent skin that showed their organs pulsing beneath. Bioluminescent patterns normally decorated their bodies, but most of the refugees had gone dark, their light extinguished by fear and exhaustion. "Okay," Danny called out to the crowd. "We can take 400 per trip. Families stay together. Anyone with medical needs comes first." A Vethani elder pushed through the crowd. She was ancient, her skin almost paper-thin, but her eyes were sharp. "You are the humans," she said, "the ones who answered." "Yes, ma'am, I am Captain Danny Webb. This is Engineer Rosa Andrade. We are here to help." The elder studied him for a long moment. "I am Grandmother Sola. I lead what remains of our council. I must ask you something, human." "Ask." "Why are you here? Your species barely knows we exist. You have nothing to gain from saving us, and yet you came." Danny considered the question seriously. Behind him, his crew was already helping Vethani families board the ship, carrying children, supporting the elderly. "Because you asked," he said finally. "Because we could, because that is what you do." Grandmother Sola's bioluminescence flickered, just for a moment. Something like wonder crossed her ancient face. The evacuation began in earnest. Rosa worked alongside. Vethani technicians trying to solve 100 problems at once. Human life support systems were not designed for Vethani biology. The air mixture was wrong. The gravity was too high. The lighting damaged their sensitive eyes. She redesigned systems on the fly, improvising solutions with whatever materials she could find. A Vethani engineer named Yoral worked beside her, translating technical specifications, offering suggestions. "Your species is very adaptable," Yoral observed as Rosa rewired an air filtration unit. "We had to be. Our world was not kind to us. Neither was ours. Perhaps that is why we understand each other." Days passed in a blur of heat and fear and desperate work. More human ships arrived. Then Pelori medical vessels joined them. Then Asari supply transports. The galaxy was waking up, shamed by human action into action of their own. But tragedy came with the progress. On the seventh day, a solar flare erupted without warning. 3 human vessels caught in low orbit never saw it coming. The radiation wave destroyed their ships in seconds. 89 humans died. 12,000 Vethani they had been carrying survived, transferred to other ships moments before impact. That night, Rosa sat on the hull of her ship, staring up at the dying star. Ural found her there. "You are mourning your dead," he said. "Yes. They died for strangers, for people they had never met." Rosa wiped her eyes. "That is what heroes do." "No," Ural settled beside her, his skin glowing softly in the darkness. "That is what humans do. I have met many species in my life. I have never met any willing to die for strangers." "Maybe you have not been looking in the right places." The evacuation continued. 1 billion saved, then 1.5, then 2. Grandmother Sola found Danny as he prepared for another run. His crew was exhausted, his ship was breaking down, and the radiation was getting worse. "You should rest," she told him. "You have done enough. There are still billions of your people down there. And you cannot save them all." Danny looked at her with eyes that had seen too much in too short a time. "Maybe not, but I can save some, and some is better than none." Grandmother Sola reached out and touched his face, a gesture of deep respect among her people. "I asked you before why you came. You said because we asked, because you could, because it was what you do." "I remember. I did not understand. Then I think I understand now." Her bioluminescence blazed bright for just a moment. "You came because you could not live with yourselves if you did not try." Danny smiled, tired beyond words. "Yeah, that is about right." He climbed back into his ship and headed for the dying world one more time. The great chamber of the Galactic Concordance had never been so quiet. Counselor Medic stood before representatives of 12 worlds, his hands trembling with something between rage and wonder. Behind him, holographic displays showed the evacuation in real time. Human ships burning through radiation zones, Vethani refugees crowding into converted cargo bays, casualty reports scrolling in a grim ticker at the bottom of the screen. 3 weeks ago, Medic began, this council calculated that saving the Vethani was mathematically impossible. We drafted statements of regret. We prepared ourselves to watch a civilization die. He let the words hang in the air. 3 weeks ago, a species we barely acknowledged intercepted a distress signal and launched everything they had. Not because they were obligated, not because they expected reward, because someone was dying and they could not stand by and do nothing. The Neth representative shifted uncomfortably. The human effort, while admirable, remains insufficient. They cannot possibly. 1.8 billion, Medic cut him off. That is how many Vethani the humans have already evacuated. 1.8 billion souls saved by cargo ships and mining platforms crewed by teachers and farmers and children. Silence fell again. The humans are dying out there, Medic continued. Their ships are failing. Their crews are collapsing from exhaustion. They have lost over 100 of their people already, and they are not stopping. They are not complaining. They are not asking us for help. He looked around the chamber, meeting each representative's eyes in turn. But I am. The Neth representative leaned forward. What exactly are you proposing? I am proposing that we stop calculating acceptable losses and start acting like the civilizations we claim to be. The humans showed us what is possible when you stop making excuses. Now it is our turn. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then the Neth representative stood. The hegemony will commit its military fleet to evacuation duty, 50 vessels, immediately. The Pelori will provide additional medical ships, another voice added. Our doctors are already volunteering. The Alsari can transport supplies to refugee camps. We have ships designed for that. One by one, around the chamber, species that had declared the mission impossible began pledging their resources. 40 species, hundreds of ships, thousands of volunteers. Grandmother Sola watched the proceedings from her refugee transport, tears streaming down her face. Her aide translated the announcements as they came in. "They are coming," the aide whispered. "All of them, they are all coming." Sola closed her eyes. The humans did this. They shamed the galaxy into action. "They did more than that." The aide pulled up a transmission. "This is being broadcast across the concordance. Everyone is seeing it." The transmission showed a human woman, barely conscious, being carried on a stretcher by Vethani volunteers. Rosa Andrade had collapsed from exhaustion after 40 hours of continuous work. The Vethani crew she had worked with refused to leave her side, carrying her to medical, singing ancient healing songs over her body. "She saved my family," one of them said to the camera. "She redesigned our ship's life support in 6 hours. She did not sleep. She did not eat. She just kept working until she fell. This is what humans are." The image spread across the galaxy. Other stories followed. Danny Webb landing his ship in zones too dangerous for other pilots. Human doctors working through radiation sickness to treat Vethani patients. A 12-year-old human girl organizing supply distribution for a refugee camp of 40,000. "They are not soldiers," Medic told the council. "They are not heroes in the way we understand heroes. They are ordinary people who decided that someone else's survival mattered more than their own comfort, their own safety, their own lives." The tide had turned. Ships from 12 species joined the human fleet. Supply lines stretched across the galaxy. Refugee camps sprouted on a dozen worlds, staffed by volunteers from species that had never worked together before. And still the humans pushed. Admiral Okonkwo coordinated the expanding effort from Earth, running on stimulants and willpower. Her fleet had become the backbone of an unprecedented coalition, ordinary humans working alongside alien soldiers and diplomats and scientists. "How are we doing?" she asked during a rare break. Her aide pulled up the numbers. 3.2 billion evacuated. "The combined fleet is moving faster than we projected. At this rate, we might actually save them all." Okonkwo allowed herself a small smile. The Concordance said it was impossible. "The Concordance did not count on you, Admiral." 6 hours remained before Thessar became completely uninhabitable. 400,000 Vethani still waited on the surface. The final push was about to begin. 6 hours to extinction. Danny Webb had been ordered to evacuate with the last wave of rescue ships. His vessel was damaged, his crew was beyond exhausted, and the radiation levels were now lethal even with full shielding. He ignored the order. "One more run," he told his crew. "That is all I am asking, one more." Nobody argued, nobody complained, they just strapped in and prepared for landing. The surface of Thessar had become hell. The sky burned crimson and black, choked with ash from fires that spread across dying continents. The dying star filled half the horizon, pulsing with violent energy that made Danny's instruments scream warnings. 400,000 Vethani remained. Clustered in the last safe zone, a valley protected by ancient mountains that would not protect them much longer. Ships from 12 species fought their way through the radiation, shields failing, hulls buckling, crews pushing beyond every limit. Pelori medical vessels that had never seen combat flew formation with human cargo haulers. Neth military frigates, designed for war, now carried refugees in their weapons bays. Danny landed his ship in the middle of the chaos. "Everyone off," he shouted at the waiting crowd. "Move fast, stay together, help anyone who cannot walk." A Vethani child stood frozen near the loading ramp, separated from her family in the crush. Corporal Andre Williams saw her, pushed through the crowd, and lifted her onto his shoulders. "I got you," he told her, though she could not understand his words. "I got you, little one." The child's family screamed her name from across the zone. Williams carried her through the crowd, the radiation burning through his suit, his skin already blistering beneath the fabric. He reached her family and handed her over. The child's mother grabbed his hands, weeping, trying to thank him in a language he did not speak. "Go," William said, pushing them toward the nearest ship. "Get on board, go." He collapsed 3 steps later. The radiation had finally won. Vethani volunteers carried him to a medical ship. A Pelori doctor worked on him immediately, fighting to save a human who had risked everything for a child he would never see again. Grandmother Sola refused to leave. She stood at the center of the evacuation zone, directing her people to ships, keeping order in the chaos. Every few minutes, someone would beg her to board a vessel to save herself. "Not until my people are safe," she said each time. "I will be the last to leave Thessar." Danny found her there between runs. "The radiation is getting worse," he warned. "We have maybe 2 hours before this zone becomes unsurvivable. Then we had better work faster." He stared at her, this ancient woman who had watched her world die and still refused to break. "You are something else, you know that? So are you human, so are you." 1 hour remained. 100,000 Vethani still waited. Ships landed and launched in continuous streams. Pilots flew through radiation that melted their shields, knowing they might not survive the next trip. Crews worked with their bare hands when equipment failed, loading refugees by sheer strength and determination. Danny's ship made 4 more runs. On the last one, his engines finally failed. He crash-landed on the surface, his vessel too damaged to ever fly again. "That is it," his engineer reported. "We are done, ship is dead." Danny climbed out of the wreckage and started helping load other vessels. 30 minutes remained. 20,000 Vethani still waited. Grandmother Sola finally allowed herself to be led toward a ship. She had kept her promise. She was the last of her council still on the surface. But she stopped at the loading ramp, turning to look at her dying world one final time. The mountains where she had played as a child, the rivers where she had learned to swim, the cities where her people had built a civilization over 10,000 years. All of it burning, all of it gone. "I am sorry," Danny said quietly, standing beside her. "I am so sorry we could not save your world." "You saved my people." Grandmother Sola touched his face, her skin glowing with something like peace. "That is what matters. That is all that matters." The last ship lifted off with 8 minutes to spare. Danny watched through the viewport as Thessar burned behind them. The star collapsed, sending waves of fire across the empty planet. Everything the Vethani had ever built was destroyed in moments. But 4.1 billion Vethani lived. 340 humans had died to make that possible. The galaxy would never forget what it had witnessed. 1 year had passed since Thessar died. The planet called New Thessar was smaller than their old world, with purple skies instead of blue and 3 moons instead of 1. But the Vethani were learning to call it home. In the central plaza of their largest city, a memorial stood where everyone could see it. 340 names carved into Vethani crystal, surrounded by gardens that bloomed with flowers from a dozen worlds. Human names, people who had given everything for strangers. Rosa Andrade walked through those gardens every morning. She had married Yoral, the Vethani engineer she had worked with during the evacuation. Their partnership had become a symbol of the bond between species, though Rosa hated being called a symbol. She just wanted to be an engineer who happened to fall in love. "The ceremony starts in an hour," Yoral reminded her, his skin glowing warm gold in the morning light. "I know, just wanted to pay my respects first." She stopped at one name near the bottom of the memorial. Andre Williams, the soldier who had carried a child through lethal radiation, then collapsed 3 steps after delivering her to safety. He had survived, barely. The Pelori doctors had worked miracles, pulling him back from death itself. He now taught Vethani children about Earth, about humanity, about why people help strangers. "Teacher Andre," a young Vethani girl ran across the plaza, her skin bright with excited bioluminescence. "Teacher Andre says today is the big day." Rosa smiled, It is. Is your family coming to the ceremony? Everyone is coming. My mother says I should thank the humans again. You have thanked us enough. The girl tilted her head, confused. How can anyone thank enough for being alive? Rosa had no answer for that. The ceremony drew beings from across the galaxy. Representatives from 40 species filled the plaza, their ships visible in orbit above. The Concordance Council attended in full, humbled by what they had witnessed, determined to never repeat their initial failure. Grandmother Sola addressed the crowd. Her voice carried across the plaza, translated into 100 languages, broadcast to billions of beings across the stars. 1 year ago, our world died. 1 year ago, we faced extinction. 1 year ago, we called for help, and the galaxy calculated that saving us was impossible. She paused, letting the words settle. But one species did not calculate. One species did not hesitate. One species heard our cry and answered with everything they had. Not because they owed us anything, not because they expected reward, because that is what humans do. In the crowd, Danny Webb shifted uncomfortably. He had never wanted to be called a hero. He had just done what needed doing. The humans taught us something, Grandmother Sola continued. They taught us that compassion is not weakness, that helping strangers is not foolish, that sometimes the most powerful thing in the universe is simply refusing to give up. She looked out at the assembled species. Today, we formally join the Galactic Concordance. But more importantly, today we establish a new protocol. When any species faces extinction, when any world calls for help, we will answer. All of us. Together. Because the humans showed us what is possible when you stop making excuses and start making sacrifices. Cheers erupted across the plaza. Later, as the crowds dispersed, the young Vethani girl found Danny standing alone before the memorial. "You are the captain," she said, "the one who kept coming back." "I am just a pilot. Teacher Andre says you are a hero." Danny knelt down to her level. "Can I tell you a secret?" She nodded eagerly. "I was scared the whole time. Every single run I was terrified, my hands shook, my heart raced. I wanted to run away." "But you did not." "No, I did not." "Why?" Danny thought about the question, about his crew pushing through exhaustion, about Rosa redesigning systems while her body gave out, about Williams carrying a child through radiation that would nearly kill him. Because being scared is not a good enough reason to do nothing. Because we decided a long time ago that other people matter, that strangers matter, that the universe is cold and dark and cruel, but it does not have to be, not if we choose differently. The girl considered this with the seriousness only children can muster. "I want to be like humans when I grow up." Danny smiled, the first real smile he had managed in months. "You already are, kid, you already are." Above them, ships from across the galaxy orbited in formation. Species that had never worked together now trained side by side. A new era was beginning, born from tragedy, forged by sacrifice, made possible by ordinary humans, who refused to look away from suffering. The galaxy had called for help. Humans had answered, and nothing would ever be the same.